Hi everybody, I'm Arthur Hughes. I'm going to be your teacher for the Business 206 class for the summer session. And I'm going to take you through a little bit of a longer video here as an intro. This is really going to cover a lot of elements of the course, the syllabus requirements, assignment requirements, some really important elements that you'll need to know as we jump into this course. But in addition to that, I'm also going to talk a little bit about my background, and I'm also going to talk about some of the resources that you're going to have as being a member of the Cameron School of Business. And finally, I'm going to kind of end with student engagement and student involvement and a couple of topics around that. So let's get started. First thing I want to talk about is my background. So I am married. I've been married for quite a long time. And I have two older children. I have a daughter who's a nurse here in Wilmington, and then I have a son who's a physical therapist up in Lexington, Kentucky. I also do a lot of volunteer work, and so that's actually how I got started at UNCW. I started working in the Cameron Executive Network as a mentor and taking on student mentees in the business school. I'll talk a lot more about CEN at the end of this particular video. In addition to that, I do a lot of speaking engagements. I volunteer to speak at a couple of different organizations to help individuals in job search. And so I talk about job search and career planning, which is essentially everything we're going to be talking about in this class. And I do a lot of posting on LinkedIn as well. I should say I used to do a lot of posting, but I'm a little busy right at the moment, and I haven't done as much as I would love to do. But really the one thing I really want to talk about, aside from those things, which are very important to me, but and also do kind of create a little bit of a picture of who I am for you, is let's talk about my background. My background is quite varied, a little bit unusual for someone for my age, is that I've worked for so many different companies. And I think there's value in talking about this with you in particular, and I'll talk about why that's important here in a moment. So first of all, about my background, I'm a graduate chemical engineer from the University of Kentucky. And the one thing I learned about that was I didn't really want to be an engineer. And I'll talk a little bit about how I kind of evolved from that when I start talking about my specific career and the jobs that I've had. And then I also have a master's degree in organizational leadership from the University of Findlay, which is a small liberal arts college in Northwest Ohio, where I lived at one point in my career. So with respect to the background, I mentioned I didn't want to be an engineer. So when I graduated from school, I actually was, let me back up a step. When I was in school, I actually was a co-op or an intern for 3 different semesters for IBM Corporation. And what I learned there was I didn't want to be an engineer, believe it or not. However, I loved, and I was chasing money for various reasons, and I knew that this was one of the more lucrative majors to have. So I stuck it out. I was actually quite good at it, even though I really didn't particularly like it. But what I did do was I was very proactive in finding a position that wasn't a classical engineering role. And in fact, what I did was I took a role as what's called an industrial marketing engineer. So it's kind of a 50-50 job between marketing and selling, but also engineering as well. So I used my technical skills a lot, but I was also customer facing, working with large industrial clients for a natural gas utility called Columbia Gas of Ohio. That's actually one of my longer stints in my career. I worked there for 9 years, and then I moved on to a company called American Electric Power, a major electric utility here in the U.S. That role I evolved into more of a business development. So I kind of left my technical background behind, and I became much more of a salesperson in business development and key account management. One of the things that came from that is I developed a very strong relationship with one of my major clients, and that's why Cooper Tires is on here. That was that client. They came to me one day after a couple of years with AEP, and they asked me, hey, you've been kind of working with us for a long time between Columbia and AEP. We have a position open for an energy buyer, and we would love for you to take it. It was actually a step back for me at that point in my career, but I decided to take the chance and do something different. And quite frankly, it was the best thing I could have done. My career really took off, and I really had a very productive career that I will now tell you about. Cooper went through an acquisition process during that time, and I actually got an opportunity to get promoted and move to England. And I was in the UK for 5 years as an international purchasing director for Cooper Standard Automotive. So I went from Cooper Tire, which is a replacement tire company, to the automotive market full on, and that's where I spent most of my career. Cooper was also where I hit kind of the first major obstacle in my career, and I was actually laid off. My position was eliminated, and laid off from that role, and I ended up in job search at that point. And I started working for a company called Akibona Brake. I relocated from Detroit back to Kentucky for a little bit, but this didn't work out. This was a bad choice in terms of location. My kids were in school, bad experiences, and I decided to move back to Detroit. And that's when I joined Highlight International as it was my first real executive role. I was vice president of purchasing for that company. What's interesting about Highlight as well is it's private equity owned. It's not a public company. So this was my first time working for a private equity organization, an entrepreneur and owner of this business. Very small automotive supplier, but it was an incredible environment, great place. I worked there for about 3 years and learned so much about the entrepreneurial environment and really got a taste for how that is so different in many ways to working for a publicly held company. However, I continued to want to continue to grow and move to progress my career, and I moved to a much bigger role as vice president of purchasing for GKN Automotive. And what's interesting about this is I worked there for 7 years, and I tell people this was the best 5 years of my career. Notice it's 5 and not 7. It's also the worst 2 years of my career in the final 2 years. What happened was we went through a hostile takeover. So we were taken over by a private equity firm, a very large one, and taken private. And it was just an incredibly chaotic mess. My job went from great to horrible overnight. I was traveling 60 or 70% of the time internationally. And I was in one of those situations where on Sunday night, I really just was loathing going to sleep and getting up and going to work the next day. So I decided to be really proactive, and I was able to network myself into another role, into the pharmaceutical industry with a company called Catalent. Catalent's unique in the fact that they are a contract manufacturing firm that you don't know about. It's not like Pfizer or Merck or any of these other major pharmaceutical companies, although they're a very big company in their own right. And so went there, thought it was going to be great. Turns out it was another mess. I went from the frying pan into the fire, so to speak. I ended up working for a really strange person, and I decided at this point in my career, enough's enough. Hated my job at GKN. At the end, Catalent is just this weird environment where I'm not doing what I want to do. And I decided to quit and take a sabbatical. I decided to take a 6-month sabbatical and try to figure out what I wanted to do next. And as part of that, I actually moved to North Carolina. And as part of that, I have I bought a place in Carolina Beach, and I came here and I decided, you know what, I'm going to try to figure out what I want to do. And that's when I was able to move into my second career. What I joke about with people now is that I said I was going to take a 6-month sabbatical, right? What I tell people now is I'm 5.5 years into my 6-month sabbatical. And the reason for that is I really found things that I really enjoy doing. Even though I'm still incredibly busy, I love everything that I do. So one of the things that I do is I'm an executive recruiter. So one of my people that I'd worked with in my career, she started her own business as a recruiter, and I joined her just basically to help out, just kind of fill some time. I actually thought I was going to use it for networking, which I have done, but that was my motivation. But I actually found that I liked recruiting, and I've stuck with that. And so what I do is I work with manufacturing companies in the aerospace and automotive sectors to help them find great people, which is a great role. It actually completed sort of the triumvirate of talent acquisition. So as you see from this slide, I've worked for many different companies, so I actually had to interview, of course, and apply for all of these jobs in many cases. Some cases it was fully on networking, but essentially I was going through the job search, and I've done that multiple times. With each of these roles, I was in a hiring manager role as well, so I've hired hundreds of people. I've interviewed thousands of people now in my career between all of the different hats that I've worn. And now I'm a recruiter, so I actually have sort of that third leg of the stool in terms of being a hiring manager, being the hired, and actually now being in talent acquisition too. So with all of that, I've kind of parlayed that into a role teaching in Business 206, but I also teach other classes here at UNCW. If you happen to be in the supply chain major and you might be interested in purchasing, I actually teach a purchasing class within the Condon School of Supply Chain. And I'm not going to be teaching that in the fall, but I will be teaching that in the spring of 25. I also teach a Uni 101 class, and I also teach a professional selling class. Unfortunately, you, as Cameron School of Business students, won't be able to take it because this class is designed for non-business school students. There is an equivalent, of course, within the professional selling concentration in the marketing department that's basically the same class, just I teach it versus a different professor. And but it's a great class if you're interested in selling. Even if you're not interested in selling, it's a great class to help you learn to sell the product that you will always be selling in your career, you. And we'll talk about that in terms of context in our class too. And the other thing that I do is I'm a career coach. So I actually take all of these skills and I actually take on paying clients to rewrite the resumes, do a LinkedIn profile for them, help coach them in their transition to figure out what they want to do next. So with all of that, that kind of gives you a little bit of a sense of who I am, my background, the things that I bring to the table, and why I'm qualified to talk about this subject, going forward. And all of this is to say this one thing to you. Your degree is not a destination, it's a launch point. And what I mean by that is I don't want you to think that you have to have it all figured out now. In fact, that's exactly the opposite. This is now to kind of test theories, figure out what you want to do, think very hard about what makes you happy and what you want to do in your career, and trying to align those things together as best you can. You can see from my background, I've done a lot of different things, worked for a lot of different companies, and I've pivoted several times from engineering to sales, from sales to purchasing, from purchasing to back to sales and recruiting. And now I'm a teacher, as among other things, right? So you can do what you want to do. Don't be defined by your parents. Don't be defined by your mentors. Don't be defined by people that will tell you what to do. You are the one that needs to figure it out. Now, all of these people are important. All of these people are influencers. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I want you to do what makes good sense for you. Now let's talk about the course more specifically. So the first thing I want to talk about is course communications. So in the course, there's going to be opportunities for us to engage, and I really encourage a sense of engagement with you. Get involved in the class, ask a lot of questions. When you do have questions, there's several ways you can connect with me. First of all, I'll talk about office hours here in a moment, but email and text, naturally you can get a hold of me. The information in Canvas has my phone number as well. Feel free to text me if you'd like to do it that way. Email's great too. I'd love to answer your questions and work with you one-on-one. And if you want to do that, you can do a phone or video appointment. And I'll show you on the next slide a URL or a QR code to access my calendar, so you can actually set a time where we can do a phone or video call to talk through any issues or concerns you might have. Of course, discussion groups in Canvas, you're very familiar with those, I'm sure. We can use that. And in fact, we're going to be using that a lot because we are asynchronous and we're not together. So it's an opportunity for you to ask questions, engage with your fellow students, talking about what you're interested in and how each of us have kind of dealt with certain situations. And then, of course, Canvas as well. You can communicate with me through that. But let's talk about office hours. So office hours, I'm going to be holding 3 times a week for 1 hour via Zoom. So basically Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 12 to 1, I'll have Zoom on. And if you choose to come and join me and ask questions, feel free to do that. I show my office here in the marketing department, but I can guarantee you I will not be there very much over the summer. But if we happen to be there at the same time, I'll be happy to meet with you one-on-one, face-to-face as well. And then I talked about the QR code here. This QR code will take you to my calendar. You can use the Calendly link here as well. I'm going to create one for my UNCW email address too. I haven't done that yet. When I do that, you can either use this one or the other one. They'll both be attached to my calendar, and you can pick a time to talk with me using that tool. All right, Canvas. So I know all of you have used Canvas, or most of you should have used Canvas, I think, before. So I'm not going to go into depth of detail here, other than to say what's included in Canvas is a vast array of resources for you. So there's each module will include multiple topics. Normally during our face-to-face classes, we're doing this over the full course of a semester. We usually do one topic per week, but since we're fully compressed, we're going to be introducing lots of multiple topics each week. But all of the information will be in there. There will be plenty of resources that you have access to, templates, scripts, example documents, articles, videos, tons of links, tons of things I've curated from the internet to offer to you so that you don't have to do that. There are things that I think give great advice, so I encourage you to embrace those, get involved and engaged, and start to explore what those resources offer for you. I also want to talk now about assignments. So it's going to seem like there is a lot of assignments in this class, and there are in terms of number, but most of them are fairly low engagement projects is what I would say. They're usually 15 to 30 minutes long, many of them are, and the only thing I'm looking for is evidence that you've done it, because how I treat this class is it's a scaffolding method, if you might have heard from that. It's basically we're going to build all the elements of job search together, and we're going to start building kind of them as building blocks. And then we're building them up to the fact that when you can actually start using it to build your resume, build your LinkedIn profile, start to plan and prepare for interviewing for jobs. All of those things are going to be built up. And it's sort of a stepping stone approach where we're going to be using each of those resources to build your personal brand and your presence online and get you prepared for the job search process. And with that, we have 3 mandatory assignments. Those mandatory assignments are the final draft resume. There is a first draft resume assignment, but that does not count for this. It's the final draft. And in addition to that, LinkedIn profile and the mock interview. All 3 of these make up our mandatory assignments. If you do not turn one of these assignments in, you will automatically get a letter grade of D as in dog in the course. We're very strict about this because these are the 3 cornerstone elements of job search, and we really want you to go through these things, and it's really important as part of this class and the objectives of this class that you cover those 3 elements specifically. And of course, as you probably know, this class is in alignment with English 206, where you have several assignments that will be in parallel with what we do here in this class. The final thing I want to talk about assignments is the late penalty. So I have a pretty severe late penalty of 25% per day. It's late, so that essentially means after 3 days, the assignment is worth 0 points. However, I still encourage you to turn it in, even though you might not get the points. And I wanted to bring this up specifically for the mandatory assignments. So if you complete the mandatory assignments late, it still counts. So if you're 4 or 5 days late for your resume and you turn it in, it's still going to count in terms of credit for the class. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is just a little bit more about the module details. So there will be a video like this in a lot of the modules, but not every one. But there will be PowerPoint presentations that I've taken from my previous classes, and they'll be inside of all of the modules. So we don't have time to go through every presentation, of course, during the summer session, but all of the material is there in the presentations. So for instance, in the interview section, I think there's 5 or 6 different presentations that you can go through. And they cover details that are very, very important to the job search process. So for many of you, you should definitely go through that. And the resources and coupled with the presentations will give you a very rich environment of resources that you can and information that you can use in this class and take away from this class, of course. So in terms of the assignments and everything that were related to the topics that we're going to cover, everything's in a very orderly fashion and will be covered there very specifically. We do have a textbook for the course, although I don't do any quizzes or anything from it, but I do highly suggest that you go out and purchase it. It's specifically designed for new college graduates, and it's good for those looking for internships as well as full-time jobs. And it covers much of the same materials that we have here. It's predominantly covering 2 areas mainly, which is resumes and LinkedIn profiles, but it also has a good interview section as well. And it's only $20. It's a fairly modest cost for something that you can keep with you and use multiple times as you continue to progress through university and actually after you graduate. So AI. First of all, I love AI. So that's the first thing you need to know. I use it almost every day. I use it in my job. I use it in my teaching, and I use it with my coaching. And it's a great resource, and if you haven't gotten engaged, highly recommend you do. It's a great resource. I predominantly use ChatGPT and Claude, which is an Anthropic product. I find those are the two best products out there. But AI is not just those things. It's so much more. And we'll talk a little bit about that through the course. I talk a lot about it in our face-to-face class. But the big thing about this is it's important, though, that it is your own work. Just like the work environment, anything that you do that isn't your own work literally is plagiarism. And certainly at the university level, we penalize for that pretty severely. So use of AI in replacement of your own work is considered cheating, and we will follow that. In addition to that, we have resources, tools that will help us identify potential cases for use of AI, perhaps inappropriately. So just keep that in the back of your mind. I love for you to use it. I think it's great for being like a personal brainstorming partner, to help pass through mental blocks, to give you different creative ways of thinking about things. And, with the advances of AI, even by the end of this semester, we may have some new things out there that I don't even know about right now. But just remember, do your own work. We want this to be a good learning experience for you. AI can supplement that, but it should not replace that. Class participation is also going to be measured. What we're going to be doing is predominantly through discussion groups, but the opportunities that you have to interact with me specifically, I count that as participation too. So absolutely, reach out to me, ask questions, set up, meet me during office hours, set up meetings. All of those things will count towards participation. And although I don't have technically extra credit per se, I do definitely give extra credit in terms of rounding grades, things like that. So the more that you network with me, the more I know who you are, the more you engage with your classmates, and I see that will reflect better on you when it comes to the point of time in the term that I actually have to submit for grades. All right. Now I want to talk about student organizations. So one of the things that I really encourage you to get involved with is, whatever major you are, there is a student organization that corresponds to that concentration. And there's 200 plus organizations on campus that are not necessarily, directly connected with your concentration, but might be another area of interest for you. In fact, one of my mentees is or has been the president of the chess club. So all of these things are really important. They really create a much more well-rounded you. And one of the things hiring managers are looking for, we are looking for the technical skills, but we're also looking for interpersonal skills, communication skills, your ability to work with others, your opportunities for leadership. And I encourage you to take leadership positions in any of these organizations as well. These are going to be things like what I call tiebreakers. If you're interviewing with somebody and you're competing against somebody that's equivalently qualified to you, you need these extra things to kind of help you get over the hump to make you the ideal candidate that they want to choose. So these are great ways of building your resume. If only going to use it to build your resume, that's okay. But the skills you get, the opportunities for engagement, building your network, all of these things are great. One thing that's really important, a lot of these groups have connections with external organizations. They bring these people in to talk about their company, talk about their jobs. And this is a great place for you to actually start doing networking. And I can tell you, I know many, many students who have actually gotten job offers through their engagement with these groups. So please think about it, get involved, and jump into this with both feet. Last thing I want to talk about in depth here is the Cameron Executive Network. So there isn't a cohort in the summer, but the next cohort will start in the fall. As I mentioned, I'm a mentor in the Cameron Executive Network, and I highly recommend this for students who are really serious about formulating who they are and preparing themselves for the transition from the UNCW to the professional world. So mentors are there. We're people who have significant experience in industry. We're typically director level or above, entrepreneurs, people who own their own business. These are people that have done it and are willing to share what they've done and how they've experienced it, the mistakes that we've made, the things that we've learned. But importantly, too, it's just to learn from somebody who's been there. We'll help you with all aspects of job search. We'll help you with networking as well. And again, many people get jobs through this mentoring program because of the connections they made and the improvements that they've seen in themselves through the mentoring process. To join, there are certain requirements. We have a few mandatory steps as well. So first of all, you have to be admitted into the Cameron School of Business. You can't be pre-admitted. I know some of you have that status. But once you're admitted, you also have to have at least 2 semesters left before you graduate. And that's just to make sure that we have enough time to work together as a mentor-mentee in the relationship. In order to join, you have to go attend a mandatory information session. There'll be 2 in the fall. And then you also have to attend a student-mentor matching session, which is essentially an in-person networking event where we all get together and we kind of get there and we start talking to each other and basically interviewing each other to see if we're a good fit. It's a good thing that you must do to go through the process, and if you fail to miss any of those steps, then you can't get into the program. Highly recommend it. It's a pretty exclusive group. Only about 20-25% of students in Cameron School of Business actually get involved. But we typically have around 400 students in the various phases, and we have over 200 mentors in the program. It's massive, but it's also great. And I want to close with the Career Success Center. So the Career Success Center is a unique opportunity for you in the Cameron School of Business. As you know, probably, UNCW has a career center. That's for all of the students across campus. The CSB Career Success Center is specifically for business school students. There's an academic advising piece of this as well, but the Career Success Center really basically talks about career discovery and job preparation. And there are 3 coaches that you can work with, and they'll take you through the entire job search process. All the things that we're going to talk about in class. But if you want one-on-one help, you can always come to me, but this Career Success Center, that's also there for you. And we have dedicated career coaches who will really work with you to develop your plan and help you get prepared for the job search process. It is not a one-way street, though. We expect you to be engaged. We expect you to be involved. There will be homework that you need to do because this really is about you. We'll give you the tools, we'll give you the guidance, but it is about you and creating this all for yourself. Another resource that you'll have as part of the Career Success Center is this Career Success Hub here. So what this is it's a Canvas module that will take you through different lesson plans for all of the work that we're going to be talking about here, but you can go through that. And as part of that, if you do complete it and meet with one of the career coaches, you can actually get a certificate that you can put onto LinkedIn that will state that you've gone through that. The Career Success Center also has an Instagram and LinkedIn feeds where I highly recommend you sign up and you follow those. There's lots of good information. We post internship opportunities through these things as well. Other ways that you can see that information too, such as Handshake, of course, but they're great ways to get up-to-date, timely information to you when you need it. As I mentioned, we have 3 career coaches. They're set up based on the first letter of your last name alphabetically. Sarah Kessler does the front end of the alphabet. Lee Klein kind of does J through V, and then Christine Hopkins does the tail end. Sarah also does TABSA students, so if you're a TABSA student, she would be your career coach. I recommend you reach out to them even during the summer and talk to them and start getting engaged because they can be extremely helpful in your job search. So this slide looks familiar. This is the one I like to close with as well. Just as a reminder, your career or your degree is not a destination. So, please get involved, get engaged, and I really look forward to working with you this semester. Thank you very much.